Okay, so real quick, let me ask you this. What is the best Tele that you've ever played? I think for a long time, outside of some of the ones that I've owned that have like a crazy amount of sentimental value, I probably would have said something along the lines of the Brent Mason signature model. You see, I played this thing a number of years ago when I had walked into this guitar store relatively close to my hometown, and I was literally just blown away with how different it was from pretty much every other Tele I had ever played. I mean, this thing had a mini humbucker, a middle pickup like some of the Nashville Teles, and a push-pull switch, and in a lot of ways, I didn't even know what to make of it. And in a lot of ways, in that moment, I started to ask myself the big question of, is this thing even a Tele? A question that I've asked a few times with various guitars over the years, but none more so than with this guy right here. You see, this actually all started a couple months ago when PRS initially released the NF3 SE, and it was a quite interesting moment for me. Having been someone who's followed the Silver Sky over the years, my immediate thought process was, why would they do this? I mean, they already have their S-style thing, right? But once I actually got my hands on it, it was a completely different ball game. And pretty immediately after starting to play it, I noticed that it was very different from the clearly vintage-inspired Silver Sky. It's like that guitar, it was John's signature, meant to be like the PRS version of a Strat. But this was Paul's take on the design, something a lot closer to like a Yamaha Pacifica or like the Ibanez Prestige. And that became clear to me with every single day that I played and practiced with it. But more than just the design, one thing about the guitar in particular began to stick out to me more and more. It's the thing that made it the most different from the Silver Sky and a lot of the different traditional S-style guitars that I'm used to. And on this, well, those the pickups. You see, not only did these not look a lot like the traditional single coils that I was used to, they also sounded quite a bit differently. And after some supreme level investigative journalism, aka asking Google and fact checking their website, I found out that the NF in NF3 actually stood for narrow field, and that's when all of a sudden it came to me and I remembered, there's another PRS that I played with that name. Now, these guitars were released just over a year ago, and they were released side by side with the Miles Kennedy signature. And I remember looking at it and immediately thinking, oh great, PRS is trying to do like the T-style thing. And even though I had initially only had a couple hours to really play with them and react to them, I noticed just how different they were, specifically the Miles Kennedy version. I was just so intrigued by that guitar. I mean, it had this body shape, but it also had a 5-way switch and a push-pull, and I was like, what even is this thing? I was like 120% sure, ready to say that that model right there, that's not a Tele. But what about the other guy? But the 53, it was much simpler. One volume, one tone, 3-way pickup selector, way more of a traditional T-style build outside of just its initial body design. But the thing that varied the most from that traditional design had to be the pickups. You see, like we mentioned before with the NF3 SE, these are the narrow field DD pickups, DD standing for deep dish. And although most people like myself, after having seen this body shape, would assume, oh, they're single coils, well, actually they're humbuckers that are designed to sound like single coils. They're made specifically with a deeper bobbin that allows for more wiring. But what does that even mean? Well, all you need to know is it means that you can wrap more wires around the pickups. But the big thing about these pickups that they keep boasting is that they're hum canceling. Once I started to actually play with this thing, it became more than just about the question of battling 60 cycle hum, shout out to Ryan, but there was a much larger conversation to be had in my mind about what I even expect from T-style guitars. Because when this model initially came out and I got to pick it up and play it, it was much more of an initial reaction, and I wasn't really able to sit down with it, really get to know it like I was when the NF53 came out and see how it compared to similar guitars. But now that I have this here, one of the very first things that I did was to actually put this up against one of my more traditional Tele style guitars. And once I could hear the sound just through my speakers, I was like, okay, what I'm hearing surprised me just a bit. And a lot of that was really due to expectations, because the first time I had ever picked up my NF3 SE and put it up against the Silver Sky, it was way more different than I could have even expected going in. It wasn't even just that I was playing two different S-style guitars, the variation tonally was so wide. And when it came to picking up this guy, I wanted to see if the same would be true, specifically when talking about the bridge pickup and the famous like T-style twang. what I was originally expecting was that this would be way more Silver Sky than NF3 because I kept comparing it to that earlier Miles Kennedy version where I was like, that was the modernized version and this is like the traditional one. But once I actually started playing it, they sounded completely different, with a good majority of those differences to my ear coming from the high end. It's like this, specifically in the bridge pickup, had a way more balanced sound than I expect from usual Teles. But even with that more balanced sound, it never really lost its twang. It's a very, very unique bridge pickup sound that honestly reminded me a lot of the G&L MFD pickups that they have in their ASAC Classic Blues Boys, where it's able to have that more balanced bridge pickup without being the twangiest thing that I've ever played in my life. But it doesn't lose the twang like a complete roll-off. I felt the exact same way once I started to play with the neck and the middle pickup. Specifically, once I had taken this out and I had started playing with the neck pickup, I went straight into this like bossa nova style jazz grooves and I wanted to see how it could hang. And I was really surprised, not because I don't think Teles can do jazz. I think Teles are one of, if not the most versatile guitars ever made. But I was surprised with how little I had to roll off on the neck pickup to really get the sound that I wanted for that jazz. So at the end of the day, what did we even learn here when it comes to this guy? And I think there's a temptation for me to just go on and on about, say, how versatile I think it is, or asking what I think now is the smaller question of like, is it a Tele, is it a T-style? But I think there's a bigger question, a question that I actually posed the first time I ever got to touch one of these, as well as the Miles Kennedy, which is, who are these guitars even for? And I feel like I have a much better grasp on that question now that I've actually had time to play this and really see what it is. And the interesting thing is, even with the uniqueness of the narrow field pickup in the bridge, or just the versatility as a whole, the types of players that I think would go for a guitar like this are probably going to be a lot of guys in like the professional Nashville country scene who just want a different take on like the vintage T-style thing that they're looking for without having to change any of the knobs or anything body-wise that they find familiar. And that's because of both the sound and, let's be honest and not afraid to talk about it, the price range. And I really do think if the NF53 is going to make its rounds around like different genres and different styles, it'll probably be in the future if they do an NF53 SE, which I think is probably, with the way that PRS seems to have been going, more likely than not. But that begs a different question of, if the NF3 already has the narrow field pickups in it, and we could probably assume that the NF53 SE would have the narrow field pickups in it, what would even be the difference between this or the SE model? But at the end of the day, I don't think it matters what I think. What matters is what you think. So please let me know, what do you think of the PRS NF53? What do you think of the Miles Kennedy? What do you think about T-style guitars in a whole and the direction that this is going? Please let me know in the comments. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. I've been wanting for a long time to really be able to check out the NF53, not just an immediate reaction, even though that was a really cool moment and that was a really important moment for seeing what I wanted with the guitar, but I was really focused on the Miles Kennedy, and to finally be able to take some time with it, to see like what it sounded like through amps that I knew, to see like how it felt to practice with it on a regular basis, I feel like that made all the difference in me more understanding like who this guitar is for and what it's supposed to be. But thank you to the homies at PRS for sponsoring this video. If you want to know anything else about the NF53, the links are in the description. Make sure to check it out. It's one of the best ways to support the channel if that's something you want to do, or if you're just curious about any of the other gear that I used in this video or any of my other videos, make sure to check out those links. Also, thank you so much to every single one of my patrons. There's some exclusive unreleased videos on there if you want to check it out and join the community. Like and subscribe if you had a good time, and most importantly, like most important of all, have a fantastic night.